Hi, I'm Melissa Turner with bmagazine.org, and I am honored to be joined by Ramy Shaath today for an interview. He is a Egyptian Palestinian political activist who himself has been imprisoned by the Egyptian military regime and actually was just released earlier this year. He's now traveling around the world sharing his story and continuing his activism. Ramy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm honored to be with you.
Thank you. So, tell us just a little bit, going back to the beginning. You were telling me that you were involved early on in the 2011 revolution. Just tell us a little bit about what it was like to be on the ground and to be a part of that world changing movement.
It has been an invigorating experience. Egypt is a big country and have lived under a suppressive regime of the Hosni Mubarak, and people at a point had enough of corruption, had enough of forging elections, had enough of poverty, and had enough of suppression of their freedom. People revolted in the millions in the streets, and in a miracle of time, which shows the people of Egypt, people have been able to cross their ideological differences, their religious differences, and have a united call for freedom and united call for democracy. Unfortunately, the forces of that army and the forces of suppression have been strong, and eventually, 2 years later, we had a coup d'etat that killed that dream. But will never be ended, and people will continue fighting for it and dreaming of it.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what you're doing to this very day. Now,
That's that's
tell us
that's
about.
very true.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for the important work you're doing. Tell us a little bit about how it came to be for you being imprisoned in Egypt. We've seen thousands, I think the count is somewhere over 65,000 political prisoners now in Egypt on trumped up charges, being accused of various things. You're one of the lucky ones to be released. And hopefully, in the coming months and years, especially with the world's eyes on Egypt with COP27 coming there next month, this is an important moment to bring light to the political prisoners in Egypt. Tell us a little bit about how it happened for you and what you experienced.
Melissa, you're absolutely right. Since that coup d'etat, since the army control of the government and Marshal Sisi becoming president against the will of the people, there has been a major crackdown on all Egyptians. Definitely activists, politicians, human rights defenders, lawyers, journalists, but all counts of Egyptians' society have had thousands of people with me in jail for the most arbitrary reasons. I have hundreds of people because a police officer stops them in the street, confiscates their phone, and check their Facebook account and find a joke or a
Yeah.
comment or even a like or a joke and a comment that was enough for them to be arrested and thrown as prisoners. In my case, yes, I am an activist and I tried to be, and I've been always an opposition for suppression and for corruption, and I will remain being. And for them, that was enough ground for arresting me and taking me to forced disappearances for a while, and then taking me to a security prosecutor's office, who's basically a security officer in a suit of a prosecutor, who asked me basically for 45 minutes about my opinion in the revolution and who did I vote for presidency. And when I started getting aggrieved and saying, "How is that to do with anything you're arresting me for? Why am I here?" He said,
Right.
"Okay, we're accusing you of being part of a terrorist organization." And I laughed and I said, "What is the terrorist organization?" He said, "I cannot give you the name." And then he said, "You're accused of spreading lies and rumors against the state using social media network." And I laughed again and I said, "I'm a very well known activist, and people actually make fun of me because I don't use social media. I don't even have a Facebook account." He
Ah,
said, "Okay, how do you usually talk about politics?" I said, "I get a lot of TV interviews." He said, "Okay, we'll change the charge into TV interviews." This is the packaged accusations that they've been using against thousands and thousands of Egyptians arbitrary and keeping them in detentions. I stayed for 2.5 years without a court, without a trial. Um, it's completely arbitrary, completely disregarding of the law, and unfortunately, this is the republic of fear that Egypt turned into in the last few years. NGOs are dissolving themselves because it's been very dangerous to continue. Parties cannot even have an event in their party premises because people get arrested when they attend an event in a party, and people are scared to use social media or talk about anything. And how do you go on from there? How do you build a country with this fear tactics? This arbitrary detention is basically a message to the whole society that you've seen this guy who didn't do anything and that you know him and he's in your circles. We're destroying him, we're destroying his family. What if you spoke? What if you oppose? What if you
Yeah.
expressed something we do not accept? This is gonna happen to you.
Mm.
This is the message, and this is what I have suffered. And yes, it's gangsters' tactics. I mean, being taken to arbitrary and the forced disappearance at the beginning, and again at the end of my term, where I was blindfolded, handcuffed, and attached to a wall for days without anybody telling me why is that happening. I've seen hundreds of people, some of them spend days, weeks, and months and years in that place with their family, doesn't know if they're alive or not, and doesn't know their whereabouts. And where every night from 9 to 5, people suffer torture parties because
Mm.
officers can, and because there's no accountability on their crimes. I've seen those marks on people's bodies as well as in their souls. And I've
Mm.
suffered 2.5 years of horrible conditions, and this must stop. And definitely having my wife's support and the family support, and being a known name that got me support from Congress, from EU
Yes.
parliamentarians, uh, eventually led to one my security in prison because I was less tortured and abused because my name was known, and
Mm.
but then and led to my release. But we cannot continue doing that one by one. We need to end this. We need to change the narrative that allows them to do that. We must hold them accountable for those crimes.
Yes, absolutely. Now, you've been on quite the tour here in the United States over the last few weeks. What kind of response and reception are you getting here with the lawmakers?
I've got a lot of response. Definitely, I wanted to thank people that supported me and supported the campaign my wife did, and I wanted to urge them to do more for the rest of other detainees.
Yes.
I've been able to share my story, and I got a lot of questions about the kind of people in jail, the situation in jail, and
Mhm.
suggestions about what can we do about it. And I always tell them we cannot continue fighting it an issue by issue. We need to go back to a democratic process. We need to pressure this regime to go back to economic process. This regime has been bankrupted, is corrupt. He's been lending and borrowing $20 billion every year since this regime took over. This year, they need $40 billion to continue that corruption. And unfortunately, this is being supported by the West. And we have an obligation, morally and legally, to condition that support with human rights and to condition that support with real democratic transformation in Egypt.
Yes. Now, Ramy, we mentioned at the beginning that you are an Egyptian Palestinian activist, and you've been very involved in the BDS movement in Palestine. And what two great causes you are a part of?
I'm proud of, and for me, it is a very similar fight, and I use very similar techniques that is non-violent, that is use the solidarity with people and awareness of people and people's power against greed, against inhumanity, against aggression, whether for people's right in Egypt or for Palestinians' right for self-determination. And in the Middle East, yes, this duality of occupation and dictators that has been feeding each other and supporting each other and cooperating with each other is making it way much worse. And I think we also need to cooperate as defenders for human rights and that people who
Yes.
believes in freedom in fighting aggression in every way.
It's one cause, freedom and
It's
human
one
rights.
cause, hundred
Yes.
percent, 100%.
So,
And I tell people this is all connected to our own. And if you when you fight for rights in Palestine and when you fight for rights in Egypt, you're actually saving yourself in the United States and saving yourself in Europe, because that comes back and hunts you in terms of immigration or in terms of extremism or in terms of right wing fanatics back home. It's about time that we change this narrative.
Absolutely. So, Ramy, tell me your thoughts with the UN COP27 coming up in Egypt. Of course, we've all been looking at this and we're like, what in the world has Egypt been chosen as a location for a UN event like this? But now we're using it as an opportunity to raise awareness about the human rights issues there. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is a really important moment where things could change?
You're absolutely right. For me, it's greenwashing of the crimes of this military regime and
Mhm.
allowing it a red carpet and a new wave of support, a new wave of legitimacy by having this very important meeting in Egypt. And there is absolutely no way we can imagine that a regime that suppresses people's rights and people's freedoms is a regime that cares about our future or cares about our green future.
Yeah,
The regime does not even allow Egyptian activists that related to the green movement or to the human rights to participate in that COP meeting. Egypt has laws that doesn't allow demonstrations, doesn't allow people to express themselves. How can that be a country where the community can be part of a bigger picture to change our future in green? Yes, but again, it might give us the opportunity to condition government's participation by Egyptian human rights. We're asking human rights activists that are going there to raise banners for human rights and for detainees and to link the two together because they are linked and because it's important.
absolutely. It'll be interesting to see how that comes about. Ramy, tell
I
us a
think
little.
we've got a lot of Capitol Hill, a lot of lawmakers that told us that they're not going and that they will issue statements saying that they're not going because of abuses of human rights.
Right. And
Yeah,
that's kind of a boycott
yeah,
part of it too.
yeah.
Yes. So we'll see what those who are going are able to do while they're there. And then there's those of us here on the home front who will be
I,
supporting as well in our own ways.
I hope so. I have many friends that when I went to jail, I knew from activists and politicians, but I came out of jail with hundreds of people that I've seen that I cannot imagine they're still rotting in the same hell I've been to, looking at the same wall, their family shattered for no reason. Each one of them is a human being, each one of them is a soul, each one of them with a family that deserves attention and deserves freedom and deserves dignity.
Yes. Agreed. Thank you so much, Ramy, for joining us today. Tell us a
Thank you,
little bit
Melissa.
more about how we can learn more about what you're doing and follow you and support you in what you're doing as well.
When I was arrested, my wife and a lot of friends and supporters had made a platform called Free Ramy Shaath
Mhm.
on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. And they're still using that in publicizing the things I do, the events I attend, and the calls I do. I had a lot of support from Egypt, people coming and looking up to me as a hope of defiance to this regime and a hope of change. And we'll continue fighting, and I'll hope I continue to be a voice for those detainees
Yes.
in the coming future.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ramy.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you for all your audiences. It's been an honor.
Yes. Take care.
Thank you.